Mr. Zahradil, 12 days have passed since the day Iran erupted in a new uprising against the regime. And 3 days ago, the EU issued a declaration on the event. It was on Sunday, I think. What should one expect after this on the European side? Do you expect the next Foreign Affairs Council to take a decisive action on this?
Well, yes, it's true that there have been already some resolutions, some statements taken by the European side coming from European institutions. I believe that these statements should be followed by actions, particularly from the level of the Council of the EU. There is a summit, informal summit of EU leaders in Prague next week. And then subsequently, there will be a regular Council EU in the third week of October in Brussels. And in the meantime, there could be also a Foreign Affairs Council. So I think that either at all these three events, or at least at some of them, there should be a point on the agenda dealing with the situation in Iran and following our condemnations of what's going on there from the side of the regime and some kind of encouragement of democratic forces calling for freedom and more democratization of the regime.
This might be the longest uprising in Iran since years. For you, from your point of view, what do you see different in this compared to the previous ones in 2019 and 2020 or 2017? Because I know that you have been following the Iranian affairs quite from close.
It is somehow similar, and yet it is also different, as you correctly pointed out. The thing is that it started as usual by a violent act, by a crime committed by the regime, which is de facto a murder of an innocent victim of a young lady by so-called morality police for a very redundant reasons. And it once again has shown the oppressive face of Iranian regime. So we have unfortunately, regrettably, seen this situation in the past. What makes this particular situation, this particular uprising different is that the protests are nationwide, that we have seen, for instance, things we have never seen before, like posters or banners or statues of Khamenei, of Qasem Soleimani and other leaders of the regime, or anything de facto bearing the regime's insignia, torched by young people in most cities. And also we have seen a lot of organized nature behind the protest. And in this, I would like particularly point out the existence and also strategy of the so-called resistance units that are linked to the best organized Iranian exile opposition, the PMOI. And I think that what is apparent is that those resistance units proved to be quite effective. They started by writing slogans, distributing messages, or installing posters in public venues. And now they are also very efficient in networking people, in sending video messages, in making those groups of protesting people interconnected so that they can become larger groups. And I think that this shows some growing impatience and growing concern of Iranian population with the regime. and hopefully, if the pressure continues, that could lead to some changes we all call for and we all wish.
Yes, and we notice considerable international support for the current uprising, and that is a specification of this case. But one wonders in what measures can the international community go beyond words to help the Iranian people in their quest for liberty? What could you suggest in this?
Well, we have in the European Parliament an interparliamentary group which is called Friends of Free Iran, and it really includes members or MEPs from all relevant political groups in the European Parliament. And we were trying to be active, and we were trying to push European institutions to go for more vocal support and also a sharper position and a better defined position vis-a-vis Iran. So I think the least we can do is not to continue appeasement of the regime, particularly when it comes to some efforts to renew the nuclear deal between EU, US, and Iran. We, of course, we have noticed that there is a unlike the previous US administration, there is a rather conciliatory tone coming from the current US administration, but we cannot from Europe influence what the US administration is doing. We can influence what the European administration is doing, what the European Commission is doing, and the European Parliament and European Council, the Council of the EU. And of course, we think that we should push our leaders at least to the situation where they would not be able to make further concessions to the Iranian regime. For instance, last week we have seen a meeting between Charles Michel, the president of the Council of the EU, and Iranian President Raisi in New York. And to surprise of many of us, Mr. Michel seemed to be full of goodwill. He repeatedly reconfirmed a willingness to renew the nuclear deal and to push it further and to go as fast as possible. I don't think that we should send such signals in this situation to the regime. I don't think that we should make gestures of a goodwill. We should rather make or raise conditions, because if the country and the regime is hit by popular protests, we cannot act like nothing's happened. And I believe that this should be discussed again in relevant European institutions at relevant EU meetings. And I'm absolutely determined and absolutely sure that a number of EU member countries would not be happy with what Mr. Michel has said in New York, and they will have some questions. So I believe that the European Union should come with a sharper and better defined position, much more critical vis-a-vis Iranian regime.
So if that's a good point, we're at. We've been witness to the last 2 weeks of Iranian youth and women, especially facing suppressive armed police and military forces barehanded. I mean, what do you think that when we're talking about a strongest EU position, does any, but just even beyond the EU, if the international community should be able to revert to some sort of preventive action, or to save innocent lives in Iran?
Frankly speaking, I don't know. The fact is that we cannot intervene. We cannot directly be involved into the situation. Another fact is that when I recall the fall of the communist regime, for instance, at the end of 80s, the situation was quite different, particularly in technologies. We haven't had any internet, we haven't had any Facebook, we haven't had any social media. there were no mobile phones at that time. So the interconnectivity today is much better and much more well advanced. And I think that it should be used thoroughly. I always rely on the most sound international support. We, as a group of Friends of Free Iran, are ready to do that, to provide you with all our possible support. And we think that institutions must speak up. And I think that the minimum we can do, or the minimum which international community can do, is not to continue some steps and not to continue some talks that at the end are very beneficial just for the regime and that are legitimizing the regime further on. But the international community should rather show restraints and should show that they care about the situation, they care about protesters, they would not allow those people to be suppressed or humiliated. And I think that we have to do it in the strongest ways possible.
Thank you very much for the time and for the answers to our questions. And we're hoping you all the best. And thank you again for all the support you've shown for the Iranian resistance movement and in the committee for Free Iran. And again, thank you.
Thank you very much. My country is now presiding over the Council of the EU, and I can assure you that we will try to do our best to put that point on the agenda and to proceed further so that we will bring some visible results very soon. Thank you very much. All the best. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Have a nice time.